Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ramachandra, Jai Shri Lakshmi Narasimha. This video is about self-control, one of the most essential virtues and the most important pathways to the only pathway, in fact, to salvation and emancipation from this material world. To understand self-control, we need to first understand what this material world is and what the energy, the illusory energy behind the material world is. So the one that's binding us to this world and to the works of this world, and the one that makes us desirous, greedy, angry with each other and with ourselves at times. So this, we need to understand what this energy is. From time immemorial, the sages have documented and also explained this in detail out of their own experience, as well as the experience of others in the form of Puranic stories, Vedic truths, in the form of poems, in the form of prose, in the form of hymns, in the form of so many divine methods of explaining this eternal truth about Maya, which is the material illusory energy that binds every one of us and makes us do things that are degrading, essentially. So to understand this, we have to first understand what is Maya and what is material energy, which is what is the basis, the foundation of our existence here and the deeds we do here. So Maya is this illusory energy which makes us believe that the all in all is this material existence, and the greatest thing for which we have to live as humans is to, basically identify ourselves with the body, which is what every single creature in this living world does. Identifying oneself with the body and then working only towards the body all the time, and eventually not just the body but just for a few chemical secretions from the brain, just working and dedicating your life to a few chemical secretions from the brain which give us a temporary feeling of pleasure and happiness, and constantly running after that feeling or a higher feeling than that, and eventually getting upset and frustrated because you cannot always get pleasure. This material world is created in such a way that pleasure and pain move in tandem with each other. So when we do not get what we want, which is that particular chemical secretion in the brain and fueled by our nervous system and our misunderstanding of this world, then we get frustrated, we get upset, we get angry, and that leads us to eternal damnation. So this is the process of degradation which has been explained very beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter as well. And today we are discussing the topic of self-control, the only pathway to come out of this vicious cycle. Bandhuratmat manastasya yenatmaivatmanajitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. The Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear. Lord Krishna has spoken this in such beautiful detail in this verse, which says that we ourselves are our friends. The Atma, the self, is the friend of the self. The only friend of the self is the self, and the only enemy of the self can be the self when it loses control of its own self. That is what this verse means, and that is the most essential, the most important truth that will lead us out of the present crisis and the eternal crisis that we have always been into as humanity, and in fact which has ensnared the rest of existence as well. So what is this process? This process begins with us identifying ourselves as the body and eventually working towards ways that seemingly give us fleeting temporary feelings of pleasure, and that we try to also avoid pain vehemently as much as possible. This is a natural reaction, and it's part of the creation of Mother Nature to make sure that humans continue existing and to make sure that humans are healthy. This particular system was created. But unfortunately, this is also one of the most important processes in binding us to this material world. The very identification that we are the body eventually becomes the only reason for us to survive, instead of, for example, as they say, eating to live, rather than say living to eat. There's a very simple way of explaining this. So there are some people who think that one must eat to live a healthy life and to reserve to make the body and mind in a very good frame so as to be able to understand deep spiritual truths and to progress in life. This is the correct understanding. But most of us, because of being bewildered by this Maya, end up living to eat, or living to do many other things which just eventually give us some temporary feeling of pleasure. So this eating is just one example that I've given here, and some people are there who eat who just live to eat. That is the opposite, and that very principle of living is what degrades us. And this is innate, this is there inside us. It is embedded in our nervous system, because our nervous system has a particular and very powerful a very powerful biochemical system inside the brain, which makes us respond to stimuli from the senses in different ways and run after it constantly. So despite this eternal truth being narrated from time immemorial, modern science makes it a little bit easier for us to understand, because we are from the modern age. We need some scientific terms to understand this. So I'm just giving you a perspective from science. So here in this case, it is the chemical dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter, and it makes our brain, it is verily, if you go to the root cause, it is verily one of the most important reasons why we're running after everything in the modern age, and even since time immemorial, but more specifically recently because of the advent of this huge trend of consumerism over the last 400 years. This trend has gone beyond any measure, and now we're all running behind just this one this and a few more neurotransmitters. We're basically working all our lives for one particular chemical, and we think that's the end goal of life, or just not chemicals, but that eventual feeling, that temporary, and we also conflate that with happiness eventually, and we keep on running for it, and this cycle never ends. It goes birth, death, and birth and death. This is the philosophy that has been, not only philosophy, but the eternal truth that's been explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm just explaining it in a very short way in this video, but I would recommend the viewers to read the Bhagavad Gita end to end, and especially there are some portions which are very relevant to what I'm speaking about today. The second and the sixth chapter, primarily the second half of the second chapter, which is considered the Saramsha of the Gita, and the sixth chapter, which is also related to this, which is about Atma Sayama, how to regain that power of self-control. So this process of enslavement eventually degrades us. It is also a process for maintaining the species. At the same time, it is also a process of degrading us as beings. We forget that we are the spirit souls. We forget our self. Our ultimate identity is ourself, pure consciousness, pure existence, and pure bliss, Satchidananda. That is our essential constituency. But the problem is we forget this, and we identify ourselves with the body, and we continue doing many different kinds of harm and damage to everyone, including ourselves and others. A very important thing that's being done today in this regard is himsa, or violence. Violence to beings outside us, outside our body. So after all, we care only for our bodies, because that's how we identify ourselves with our body, and we do anything and everything possible to make sure that we can take we can actually give pleasure to this body, even if it includes killing or causing extreme pain to another. The very ignorance that we are the body makes us do all these kinds of abominable deeds, like what is happening today. Millions and billions of animals are being slaughtered each and every single day, billions to the count of billions, and if you go annually, it could be trillions of animals being slaughtered every single year. And all for the sake of this temporary feeling of pleasure that people get while eating, the non-vegetarian carcasses of animals. So this is the very base instinct, to think that we are the body and then do everything, regardless of any kind of moral, or regardless of any humanitarian, regardless of any, even animal values, in the pursuit of this unending and very much fleeting, involvement with pleasure and pain, which is a constant cycle that we are programmed to go into. So the only way to come out of this is to realize that there is a very powerful strength within each and every one of us, the power of the self. Nothing in this universe is stronger than the power of the self, and there is a method to ignite that power and maintain that power so that we can eventually be freed. So the power of the self is very much akin to a dormant engine of a supercar, which is just waiting to be ignited and maintained, which can lead us out of the mire that we are in presently. So it needs an ignition, a kickstart, a jump start, and then it needs maintenance. So that's how the power of the self is. It's there within every one of us, but we don't even look at it, and nor do we even care to energize it. Some people are on this process, and that is called the spiritual process. Many people don't understand what the spiritual process is, but the spiritual process is nothing but regaining that control over ourselves, which is quite difficult for people who think it is difficult, and for people who are not prepared to go through the grueling and transformative process of realizing that we are not the body, in simple and clear words. So to ignite that power, we have to go through this process. It might be very long. It might even go beyond births. As souls, we have already gone through different births. When I say different, it could be millions of births. There is literally no number, limitless number of births. So this spiritual process, if done properly, can even give one emancipation in a matter of a few seconds or in an instant. But that happens only to very great people who have already done really hard work in their previous birth. So we have to start somewhere. We have to start now. And if you're watching this video, or if you've read Bhagavad Gita, or if you've read any great text, like for example the Upadesha Saram of Sri Ramana Maharshi, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, then probably in your previous birth somewhere you have been in association with a spiritual process, because of which you've been in connection with this today or in any point of time in your life. So you need to make use of this. We need to make use of this, and there is a process for reigniting this. We have to strengthen our mind, and to talk in more biological terms, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is responsible for the function which tells us whether or not to do something. And that is there within every one of us, that moral sense, that understanding of what is right and wrong is there. And we also call it conscience, which is the predominating and powerful nature that is even beyond the prefrontal cortex, which controls the prefrontal cortex. So we have to strengthen this conscience, and the conscience eventually strengthens the prefrontal cortex. So even the other way around. So how do we strengthen the self and the power of the self? We need to follow a religious routine, which is why there are religions existing today. Imagine a world without religions. When I say religion, I don't mean political factions resembling religions. I mean religion as a way of life, that too eternal religion, Sanatana Dharma, not one that changes every single day. Today I have a religion, tomorrow I change my religion. That's not religion. Religion, the English term of religion, is very narrow and very silly. So let's just let go of that. Let's say dharma, a path of dharma. And dharma is a perfect word. It has no translation in English. We cannot say dharma is religion. Dharma can be duty, it can be religion. It is a combination of everything, and the English terms cannot even make a proper translation of it. So we have to follow a dharmic life, a Sanatana Dharma way of life. That includes a proper routine, devotion to God, and also when we say God, it should also be an idol, because initially, because the mind is so perturbed by all the things around us and the objects around us, we need something to focus on and concentrate on. Because now, for example, all the negative things around us, there is something to concentrate on. Now if a non-vegetarian or an alcoholic looks at some meat or some alcohol, that is an object. He has something to concentrate on. In the same way, a devotee, a person who's seeking to go in the spiritual path, needs something initially to be focusing on. That is an idol. So idol is very important. An idol can also be a flame. It can be Agnihotra. It can be a particular idol made of stone. It can be an idol made of wood. Something to idolize, something to concentrate on, something to keep our faith on is the beginning. And then you frame a proper routine. This is mentioned in our Shastras. I'll just give a snippet of this today. That is getting up early, sleeping early and going in cycle with the sun and the moon, fasting regularly. Fasting is a wonderful way to control the senses of our body, and then at least in the beginning avoiding that which is wrong. The ultimate stages of self-control in the future, which at present is very rare for people like us. The ultimate stages are wherein you don't get extremely attracted by anything material, nor do you get dejected in the absence of it. Na hrishyate and na shochate. So that is what is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So that is the very high stage which we will eventually reach. But in the initial stages, when we are already so attached to this material world, we have to start with stage 1. That is, at least avoid things that are negative, that are harmful for us. At least we have to start with that basic thing. And for example, the different behaviors that addict us, that make us a slave of the system, and that harm others, including ourselves, because eventually we're all one. So there is no point in saying we, because we're all one at the end of the day. So if you're doing harm to yourself, you're also doing harm to the one. If you're doing harm to some other creature, you're harming yourself too. And this is a very deep philosophical thought that we can understand only by a lot of meditation and practice. But this is the essential truth. So avoid harming anyone else, avoid harming oneself. This should be the basic tenet of life. And do things which are healthy and that are good for us, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and not only us, but our surroundings, our environment as well. Because these trees, these plants, these animals, and these humans, every single part and parcel of creation is us. That is also the self. Hence, no harm should be done to anything else, because that is also you, and you are also that, which is what is mentioned in the Vedas, Tattvamasi. Hence, avoid causing harm to anything in this material world as well. Anything in the sense, any natural existence, and avoid causing harm to your own body and your own mind. That is the path. So this includes getting up early, sleeping early, eating the right kind of food at the right kind of time, avoiding excesses in life, and of course getting rid of all the addictions in life, which can be drinking, which can be the internet, which is a very big addiction, especially for the youth these days, and avoiding of course they're very toxic forms of the internet as well, which go deeper and deeper. So it starts in a very simple way and eventually it goes in a downward spiral and leads you to the abyss of damnation. So the only way to come out of this is to give strength to yourself, and that is through a proper religious routine, devotion to God, and also respect and reverence for all life forms, and at least trying to grasp with every single passing day the concept of Tattvamasi and the concept of Atma as a Bandhu and the concepts in the Gita. And of course, this includes reading the scriptures regularly. Not only the Gita, but even the Bible later on has the same ideals, which is taken from Sanatana Dharma. Even the Quran has the same ideals. Every single religion on earth which has been meant to bring humanity back from insanity is having these very same ideals, and hence we must follow on a righteous path to get back to that. And Saint Tiruvalluvar, a very great philosopher and a visionary of ancient Tamil Nadu, has also mentioned the same concept in his Tirukkural, which is very enlightening and is a must read. Adakkam amararul uikkum adangamai aarirul uittuvidum, which means in ancient Tamil that self-control places one amongst the gods, because that's the level of refinement we can reach. That is the power we have within ourselves. And adangamai, the absence of self-control, will lead us to the abyss of total darkness, will plunge us into the abyss of darkness. So the best thing for us is to go on the right path now. Thank you. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ramachandra, Jai Shri Lakshmi Narasimha.